Pour water onto the starved, glowing iron of a steam boiler, and it flashes into 700 times its volume of steam in a single heartbeat. That's what ripped the steamboat Sultana apart on the Mississippi River, just 7 miles north of Memphis. The clock had barely passed 2 in the morning on April 27, 1865. Around 1,164 people died that night, and by some Army counts, the toll climbed closer to 1,800. Either way, it's still the deadliest maritime disaster in American history. Now here's the number that should genuinely stop you cold. The Sultana was built to carry 376 passengers in total. That night, she was carrying more than 2,127 human beings. That's over 5 times her legal load. And most of those people weren't tourists. They were paroled Union prisoners of war, freshly released as the Civil War ended. Many were half-starved survivors of the Andersonville and Cahaba prison camps, finally heading home. These were men who'd already endured the deadliest stockades of the entire war. Surviving all of that, only to die on the boat ride back, is its own bitter joke. And the machine that killed them had been patched together in a single rushed day. The engineer who signed off on that patch knew full well it was a shortcut. For generations, the story's been told the very same way. A greedy captain crammed too many men aboard, the boat rounded a bend, and the boilers blew. That version is comforting because it lets us blame one bad man. The physics tells a much colder story than that. The Sultana was a pressure vessel engineered to fail. Almost every safeguard that should have caught it had already been overruled. Think for a second about what a steam boiler actually is. A fire tube boiler is a brilliant idea and a genuinely dangerous one. It packs a huge heating surface into a small, light shell to make more steam. Hot gas and open flame race through metal tubes called flues, and those tubes sit buried in water. As long as the liquid covers the hot iron, the metal stays cool enough to hold its shape. The Sultana carried 4 such tubular boilers, mounted side by side and plumbed together as one. Push that shared design too hard, and one failing boiler drags its neighbors down with it. Each unit ran 18 feet end-to-end, about 5.5 meters, and 46 inches wide. The gauge watching them was set to lift at 150 pounds per square inch. That thin margin is all that stood between a working engine and a bomb. Here's the moment the iron turns traitor on the men who trust it. The instant the level drops below the tops of those hot tubes, the bare metal superheats. It races far past the boiling point while still looking perfectly solid. Then the boat shifts, liquid sloshes back across that glowing plate, and everything changes at once. It flashes to vapor, expanding as much as 700 times its volume in a blink. The pressure spikes faster than any relief valve on Earth can vent it. There's no warning roan and no slow build, just a sudden wall of force. Engineers would later name this runaway the flash steam cascade. Picture 1 cup of water becoming a full barrel of steam before the needle even twitches. Every steamboat on the river ran this exact risk, yet few crews truly respected it. But low water is only half the trap. The iron itself was deeply suspect from the very start. These boilers were built from charcoal-hammered No. 1 iron, barely 1/3 of an inch thick. That grade was about the finest iron the foundries of that era produced. By any modern standard, it was hardly fit to hold high pressure at all. The metal loses its springiness and snaps with a sudden jerk once it's heated and cooled enough. The feed water pumped into them made everything far worse. It came straight from the Mississippi, raw and brown, thick with suspended grit. Every 1,000 pounds of that river water carried roughly half a pound of silt. The mud baked on the boiler floor as a hard, stubborn crust.
Engineers call that buildup scale, and this sediment-scale blanket behaves just like insulation. Wherever it forms, the water behind it can no longer reach the iron to cool it. Hot spots bloom under the crust, and the brittle plate cycles hotter and colder until it's ready to rip. This boiler wasn't simply an accident quietly waiting to happen. It was a bomb with a fuse that was already lit. Now meet the man who set it ticking. 4 days before the disaster, Docked at Vicksburg, the Sultana's middle boiler began to bulge. Chief Engineer Nathan Wintringer faced a simple, brutal choice. A proper repair meant cutting out the bulged plate and riveting in fresh iron over several days. Instead, his boilermaker hammered the bulge flat and riveted a patch over the weakened seam. That patch was thinner than the very wall it was supposed to reinforce. The whole job took a single day on April 23, 1865. Wintringer knew the patch was undersized, and he approved it anyway. The boat, by then, simply wasn't allowed to wait any longer. So why was everyone in such a desperate, reckless rush? Captain James Cass Mason had quietly cut himself a deal. A quartermaster named Reuben Hatch was funneling thousands of freed prisoners onto one vessel. Rumors of kickbacks for packing the boats full followed that officer everywhere. So the Sultana steamed north, loaded 5 times past her limit. She rode on a one-day patch, brittle iron, and boilers caked with scale. Every margin of safety was already spent before she left the dock. She blew apart at roughly 2 in the morning, 7 miles above Memphis. 3 of the 4 boilers let go in the same instant. The blast tore the center clean out of the boat and flung burning coal across the decks. Men who lived through that explosion dropped straight into a Mississippi swollen with spring flood. Most of them had never learned to swim. Rescue boats worked the dark current for hours, lifting the living and the dead from the river. Roughly 200 who were pulled out alive still died later from their burns. There's no reason to dress that moment up. The bare numbers carry all the weight it needs. So what, in the end, actually killed all those men? For decades, the answer was simply the bend in the river. The boat tipped, water ran off the high boiler, and the careening surge did the rest. It's a tidy story, and it's almost certainly wrong. After the Sultana, insurers founded the Hartford Steam Boiler Inspection and Insurance Company in 1866. They built that firm specifically to stop disasters exactly like this one. It still helps write America's boiler and pressure vessel safety codes today. That long history makes their verdict on the Sultana very difficult to wave away. In 2015, its principal engineer, Patrick Jennings, went carefully back over the evidence. Survivors described peace and quiet in the seconds before the blast, not a vessel rolling through a turn. General Hoffman, an Army investigator in 1865, found nothing to show the boat was careening. Their reconstruction points instead at a machine that had been quietly failing for days under its own crew. The river bend, it turns out, didn't kill those men at all. What killed them was the brittle iron and the starved low water inside those boilers. And riveted right over the worst of it sat that undersized one-day patch. That's the hard lesson the entire industry finally took away. Almost every rule governing boilers and pressure vessels today traces back to that spring night. The inspections, the thickness standards, the water controls, all of it was bought with these bodies. A boiler built and run like the Sultana's would never survive a single modern inspection. The Sultana proved that a pressure vessel is only as honest as its weakest patch. You simply can't shortcut metal with a deadline. If a machine exploding for the exact opposite reason everyone assumes unsettles you, go see why 15 feet of graphite detonated Chernobyl right here.